I have to assume that in Paleolithic times, there were instances where our forebears sat around the campfire and, I don't know, argued about the list of the 10 best cave paintings. I'm not even sure they had numbers like that, but we can't help ourselves. Arguing about lists is bred into our bones. And so we're going to do a little bit of that today because the New York Times took it up to a next level, the 100 best movies of the century so far, with real players from the business, ranging from Nicholas Sparks to John Waters. That's quite a range right there, making their ballot choices, and I guess the end result is some kind of average of those. We'll also talk about the new series Ironheart as Marvel tries to reboot. All right, so we're going to talk today. It's the nose on a Thursday. I think that's banned in Leviticus, so we're probably all damned for all time. But we're going to talk in the second segment about the much discussed and heavily promoted New York Times 100 best movies so far of the 21st century. And then there's sort of like spin-offs. There's one where the readers pick, and then there's the individual ballots. And there's a lot to talk about in there. That'll be the second segment. We're going to begin with Ironheart. And Ironheart is a latest series entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's on Disney+, and it starts with a very fantastical premise, which is that there is a young 20-something black woman in Chicago who likes Alanis Morissette. But, from after that, I think it's fairly realistic. I mean, that was the only place where they were really kind of stretching the bounds of credulity for me. To talk about it today, Taneisha Duggan, who's the Director of Arts, Culture, and Entertainment for the great city of Hartford. Zandra Ellen is a podcast producer, and she writes the How Can I Make This About Me? I thought I was not supposed to talk about the Substack. Now it's back in the introduction. It's so complicated. Well, I like the How Can I Make This About Me Substack that Zandra Ellen does, so I'm happy to be talking about it. Shawn Murray, stand-up comedian, writer, host of the Fantasy Filmball podcast, and the soon-to-be-released, co-hosted with me, Not the Guys You Kill, a podcast about Michael Clayton. So we're going to begin, with Ironheart. It is, a carryover a little bit from Iron Man. It's I don't know. We'll have to talk about whether those are the iron boots that Dominique Thorne is trying to fill. But we have Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams and Anthony Ramos as Parker Robbins. Let's hear a little. I did Zandra Ellen wrong. She's not in this. She's not in this whole thing. And I miss Bill Yousman. I've screwed up the thing already. Let's start over. No, we can't do that. We're live. Bill Yousman is professor of media studies at Sacred Heart University. He is not Zandra Ellen. Zandra Ellen will be coming in the next segment. Okay, now we're ready to hear Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams and Anthony Ramos as Parker Robbins, who's kind of the almost sort of unwilling, scary villain guy in Ironheart. Here we go.
I assume these jobs aren't exactly legal.
And not exactly.
Look, I don't want to hurt anyone.
It's not like that.
Okay, so what do you do?
Theft, extortion, breaking and entering.
Why?
Why do you make iron suits? I'm sure you have a good reason why you do what you do. And I have reasons of my own. Now, you could try to get this cash out there, but you already know what it's going to come with. Red tape, delays, strings attached. Join me, and I will give you the tools to help you carry out your vision. ASAP. So you in or out?
Better be worth it.
It will be. But we're gonna need that iron suit tomorrow.
No problem.
Ironheart is a miniseries. It is 6 episodes long. Cliffhangers would suggest that it will go on from here. The 20th television series in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I would just also like to point out part of a pattern where they're kind of translating from male to female. They did it with Hawkeye. Haley Steinfeld then took over from Jeremy Renner. They did it with Incredible Hulk Attorney at Law, or whatever that's called, where Mark Ruffalo turned into Tatiana Maslany. And now they're doing it here with Ironheart, to whatever degree Ironheart is a translation of Iron Man. So let's hear a little bit about how the panel felt about this. I made the argument earlier today that the show's got 3 burdens minimum. I mean, it has to just sort of be good in its own right. It's got to work that way. It's also got to help with this reboot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Most of its big stars are either dead within the reality of the series or have moved on to do other things. So new faces have to come along. And I think there's also a pretty substantial DEI burden, too. I mean, particularly at a time when the federal government is just attacking DEI right and left. This is a very, very representative series. The characters are Black. They are Latino. There's a drag queen with a major role in it. So it has kind of an unusual burden that way. But Taneisha, I think we have to just start with whether it just works as itself, and maybe you can get us started with that conversation.
Well, I'm going to start in a couple places, and it may not actually answer the question you've asked, but I'll start with, I wish this show was people could see it live, because your dance with the opening credits was the best, because the music in this show is incredible. Yeah. So that's thing one. Thing two, I'm gonna take umbrage with your premise around DEI, because those letters do not mean people of color. They have been sort of morphed to mean that now, but that's actually not what they mean. They're as much about handicap ramps as it is for a white dad to be able to take paternity leave. I'm not going to have that argument today, but I get your point, which is this is a very Black movie, a very Black show. And that's okay. And there was a time where we had like Family Matters and Family Ties, and we didn't go, oh, Family Matters, it's the Black family show. We were just sort of like accepting of the fact that we are a multitude of Americans, and we get to Marvel too. So all of that premise to say that I didn't hate it. I wasn't like, oh my God, gotta watch this next season, but it like did the thing that Marvel shows do, which is like, broadly funny. It gave us some characters, and it's going to kick us off into another world, which it always does. There's always, as you say, a cliffhanger or a reason that you've got to come back again. I loved the witchiness of Cree Summers and, all of that. And as a former 20-year-old that loved Alanis Morissette, it was nice to know that we were real. You live and you learn.
All right. So let's go down the line here. Just get these first impressions from everybody. Shawn Murray, how about you? How's this working just as a general piece of entertainment and intellectual property?
Well, to Taneisha's point about the music, at the very worst, it's a great show you could just put on and just, perk your ears up every now and then because, oh, that song's great, or I remember that song, or this is a perfect song choice for this. It's fine. It's fine. It's like I think you make a great point, Colin, that it's very burdened by the weight of doing like 7 different things. I don't know if it nails any of those things particularly. I feel like the dialogue is so funny because there's so many scenes where it's like, hello, my brilliant friend. Remember when your stepfather, Gary, died? He knew my sister, and that was in the past. But this is the present now. We live in Chicago. It's just so like the expository dialogue is so funny because they're trying to do so much setting up, which is funny with the Marvel project. The idea that they introduced Riri Williams 3 years ago in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and they still have to do so much setting up is sort of one of the issues with the whole thing. I didn't hate it. I like the witchiness of Cree Summers. I hated the witchiness of the other magic stuff going on. I don't care about. I'm not gonna spoil it, but I don't care about a character they introduced in the in the final episode. I also think it's kind of weird some of the resurrection AI stuff going on in here, but
well, we can talk about that
fine.
too. Yeah, and just don't read anything, including Wikipedia or IMDb, or if you want to be surprised by the casting choice in the final episode that he's talking about. But yeah.
Before Bill pops in, I just want to say something about like sort of like the way in which Black writers write and the culture of like Black content, because this sort of like everything in the kitchen sink mode of storytelling is very much in the legacy and line of how we storytell. I went through this a lot, working with young Black writers in theater. I see this in Tyler Perry films. So I just want to say, like, as like points of context around how we make things, that is actually part of the sauce.
Yeah, although it's interesting, and this is a reasonable people may differ, and I have no contribution to make to this. I can't have a contribution to make to this other than a quarter of other people. But I was listening to the Midnight Boys Ringerverse episode. This is a show not unlike The Nose, except that it's always about sort of, kind of nerd culture and Marvel stuff and things like that. And on this episode, 3 of the 4 panelists were Black men. And they had a real problem. They felt like this was Black culture that was focus grouped, that ultimately there might have been a lot of really creative, smart people in the writer's room, but somehow or other this felt as though this was somebody trying to make a movie about Black culture and Chicago Black culture that could be shown on Disney Plus to a white audience. And I don't think that everybody reads it that way, but they were just saying, we don't know anybody who really talks like that. So, I mean, as I say, reasonable people may differ, but Bill Yousman, we got to get to you.
Well, isn't it ironic that Colin thought Taneisha could not like Alanis Morissette? You ought to know, Colin.
I see what you did there.
I'm going to stop. So my reaction to the show is bifurcated. And there's a couple different explanations of that, which I think both are plausible. One is that when I watched I'm pretty sure they dropped the first 3 episodes, and then like a week later, they dropped the rest of it. I watched the first 3 episodes and didn't think it was all that great. Like, I didn't think it was terrible. I thought, this is okay. I'm not sure if I'm feeling a little, Marvel or superhero fatigue. That's something that gets written about a lot. It doesn't usually affect me because I grew up reading Marvel comic books. I still read Marvel comic books. I'm all about it. I'm all about that intricate kind of universe that they've created. But it just didn't seem fully cooked to me. It felt, kind of stale. Then I watched the second 3 episodes the next day, and I just felt like it just kept getting better. Like each episode for me was better and better and better. I thought the 4th episode was my favorite until, I actually did love that last episode, and no spoilers, but I did love the introduction of that character who is a major presence in the Marvel comic book universe. And I did love the casting choice for that character. So by the time we got to that last episode, I was ready to watch some more. And at first I would not have thought that, but I am now really interested in another season to see where they go with this and how they develop it further.
Yeah. The White Castle fight scene in particular, I thought was
so good,
pretty terrific. So we should talk a little bit about the AI part of this. We should say that Lyric Ross plays Natalie, but with periods after every single letter in the name. An AI resurrection of the dead best friend of the protagonist. I feel that Lyric Ross steals every scene that she's in, and she's usually stealing it from Dominique Thorne, who is the titular, the star of this series. But let's hear a little bit of their back and forth. Here's Riri Williams and Natalie. A2, please.
Who are you? I'm Natalie. I'm not calling you that. Okay, you could call me neuro-autonomous technical assistant and laboratory intelligence entity instead, but Natalie just kind of rolls off the tongue a little better,
Fine. Call yourself whatever you want. It's not like you're gonna be around much longer anyway. Run diagnostics.
Wait, what? What you mean I just got here?
Run diagnostics.
Okay, so you just gonna threaten my life and then ask for a favor.
Favor?
That's how you do business.
Girl, that was an order.
Oh.
Which, as an AI, you're designed to obey. Run diagnostics now.
See, I just don't understand why you want to erase me when I'm literally perfection.
No, you are a mistake.
How, Sway?
My goal was to recreate a very sophisticated Wakandan AI called Rio to enhance my
They
suit's
sound like
functionality.
Victorian era ghosts. Listen, that could be
But
us, but you
somehow,
tripping.
I'm looking at a hologram of my dead best friend instead.
Yeah, that's only weird if you make it weird.
So, Shawn, apparently I would know Lyric Ross if I had watched This Is Us, but I think this is my first exposure to her. I think she, Anthony Ramos, Manny Montana, Shea Coulee, Alden Ehrenreich, all doing really terrific jobs as kind of supporting characters. But I think Lyric Ross does jump out as Natalie.
She absolutely does. She's very good. The character is just so weird, though. It's like it's the AI version of her memory
Yes.
of her friend, but also the AI can remember the moment she got killed, which she wouldn't be able to remember on her behalf. It's strange. But I think the performances are so strong. I think all the other characters, aside from not all of them, but most of the characters aside from Riri, they're just like people. They're not tasked with being like the heir to Tony Stark in a sense, and like the idea that she is like, the next Tony Stark is probably some black girl from Chicago is an interesting enough idea, but it's kind of like a lot of weight to put on a character because she's just doing like, I have to do this. It's very like aspirational speak every time she talks about like, and like even like when the scene you played earlier when they're talking about like her joining the team of villains or whatever, the thieves, and she's like, wait, so this stuff is illegal? It's like, you're from Chicago, like what are you talking about? Like but it's not, it's like it's the writing sometimes, like the dialogue is so like they don't do her any favors.
No, I do. I agree. I find Riri annoying, but I don't think that's Dominic Thorne's fault. I think the character is written in kind of an annoying way, and it's the unglamorous job of kind of selling the whole reality of everybody else to us, and she probably does as good a job with this as anybody could. But I don't think. I think you're right. I think the writing is not doing her any favors. Bill, one performance that has really jumped out at me is Anthony Ramos. Anthony Ramos, probably best known for Lin-Manuel Miranda collaborations. Here, he's this villain. It's sort of not entirely clear that he wants to be as bad a villain as he's wound up being, and so he's known as the Hood. His real name is Parker Robbins. This is the first time I've seen him outside of a Lin-Manuel context, and I mean, the guy is just, he's got a lot of charisma.
Yeah, he does. And the character is tortured, both, psychically and physically. And the Hood, his alter ego or whatever you want to call it, without doing any spoilers, is also a real presence in the Marvel comic book universe. And it ties into this trope. And this is the case with Riri's character as well, that is a regular common thing in Marvel comic books, and really right back from the beginning, that they often take people who are on, quote, the wrong side of the law, but explain why, and they give them some real reasons for that, which makes them ultimately redeemable. That is definitely Riri's arc. I don't know if it's possible for it to be Parker's arc, but he does embody the desperation of that character really well. And I also want to sign off on Lyric Ross. I actually thought Natalie was the best part of this, and that it often kind of comes alive when she's on the screen, even if, as Shawn points out, there's some little question marks about the plot points of that.
Right. No, I don't think, David Chalmers or some consciousness expert would be able to explain this whole thing. But, one thing, Taneisha, that I think about the Marvel stuff is it's sucked up, obviously, so many creative resources, not just in terms of the A-list actors who wind up in these things, but writers and directors. And, and one of the questions that I often have, and I land on the side of Marvel an awful lot of the time, and I think maybe this time too, is if you took superheroes and iron suits and everything out of it, would it be an interesting story? Would these characters be interesting? And Taneisha, I would say about this, yes, I think the representation of certain family dynamics. I mean, Shawn is right about the clunky expositional writing, but the characters and their relationships, Riri's relationship with her mom's relationship with the AI version of the dead Natalie, some of the characters in the criminal gang, the Alden Ehrenreich character. I don't know. I sort of thought this has enough meat on its bones, maybe, so that if you took all the superhero magical stuff out of it, it might work. I don't know. What's your take, Taneisha?
I think you're right about that. One of my favorite scenes was, her mom keeps asking her, why don't you reach out to me? Why don't you connect to me? Come on, come on. And she finally goes, Mom, I need you. I think it's like episode 4 or 5. And it's like, oh, exactly. All of those times I was like, I'm here for you. And you were like, no, I've got it on my own. So I think you're right. I think there is sort of a beautiful story about a girl sort of finding herself and who she wants to be and how she wants to be in this world. I love Tony Stark and I love Iron Man. It's my favorite Marvel character. And I actually think that they're, as focus grouped as this idea probably was, there was an opportunity, and maybe still is in season 2 and beyond, as she ages into who she is, to be that kind of cutting, snarky, smart, person you want to be. And I think one of the things that is missing from once you take all the things, the thing that makes her sparkly is the Iron Man suit. She isn't actually sparkly on her own, which is the thing about Tony Stark. Tony Stark was a glitterati all on his own. And I think we're longing for that. But at baseline, I think you're absolutely right. I think that, this story of this girl and her friends and figuring out how to deal with loss and who she wants to be is at the core. And they do a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, and I'm glad
I'll just jump in to say quickly, one of the things that I think is interesting is in terms of on-screen time, she is much, much more Riri than she is Ironheart.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really interesting choice and helps to develop a lot of that stuff you're talking about, Colin, in terms of could this be a good story without the science fiction elements?
Yeah, and I'm glad, Taneisha, you mentioned the mother, too, because I think that's a really good performance and it's an interesting character, and I'm stealing this from one of the Midnight Boys. But the moment where she meets Natalie and then she looks at her daughter and says, could you make one of Gary? Gary is her dead husband. There's just something just incredibly heartbreaking about that being her first reaction. I think the actor does a really good job with it, too. So, it's emotionally real. All right, we're going to have to take a wrap here. We're going to go to the second segment. Shawn and I are leaving because we don't think Michael Clayton is high enough ranked in the 100 best movies here. So, and Tanisha's leaving. So it'll just be really Xandra and Bill Yousman to talk about the 100 best movies of the 21st century after this. Thanks so much to Taneisha Duggan. We'll be back.
Saturday night at 8 o'clock, I know where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna pick my baby up and take her to the picture show. Everybody in the neighborhood is dressing up to be there too. And we're gonna have a ball just like we always do. Saturday night at the movies.
All right, we are reconvening with a slightly modified panel. Now I will get this all correctly. Zandra Ellen is now joining us, podcast producer. She writes the How Can I Make This About Me Substack, which I'm a big fan of. Shawn Murray, a stand-up comedian, writer, host of Fantasy Filmball podcast, and soon to be released Not the Guys You Kill, the podcast he and I are going to do this every week. We're just only going to talk about Michael Clayton. Bill Yousman, professor of media studies at Sacred Heart University. I got to have lunch. I never get to have lunch with anybody. I got to have lunch with Bill and a person to be named later yesterday. It was an awful lot of fun. So it was Danny Haar, actually. But all right, so we're going to talk about, it's hard to sort of wrap your minds around this whole project, but the New York Times, after polling a lot of people, kind of creatives from the world of the movies and movie adjacent creatives, came up with this list of the 100 greatest movies, 100 best movies of the 21st century so far. This also resulted in the release of how actors, directors, and other film lovers filled out their ballots for this. And then the readers responded with their top movies of the 21st century. So there's a lot of lists to get through, is what I'm saying. And it's hard to know where to start. But Bill, I don't know. Can you figure out? I'm designating you host for the next 60 seconds. How do we take a bite out of this to get a conversation going? There's so much material here.
Gee, thanks, Colin. Yeah. No pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, first, I do have to say, my first thought was the only reason we're even having this conversation today is that you and Shawn can complain that Michael Clayton is not at least, like number 3 instead of appallingly number 93,
right?
Which I have to say, I having rewatched it because of you two, I kind of have to agree that it should be a little higher.
Yeah. Well, Shawn and I will stipulate. You go ahead. Yeah, Shawn, go ahead.
I'm not even saying it should be number 3. 93 is insane.
Yeah. As my wife once said to me, complaining when she was still doing coursework, 93 is the lowest possible A, which tells you a lot about her perfectionist mindset.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would say, I want to. So I'm going to be annoying about this, but they call it the best movies of the 21st century, and I just have to point out that we're only a quarter into the 21st century.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, because at least I personally won't be around to see what the best movie of 2099 is, although I'm looking forward to that. But there's a certain level of pomposity about trying to make that declaration so early. But okay, I get it. We don't want to wait so long. And then, of course, you're going to get into all the stuff about the quibbles. I think there's lots of quibbles that you could have. One, personally, for me, is no Spike Lee movies, not a single one. People could question, why isn't Barbie on there? Why isn't Mean Girls on there? As Zandra pointed out, I'm kind of stealing that a little bit, but there's always going to be those quibbles. But it is a big task. And what I do like, and I think a lot of people like, is the way they crowdsourced it with a lot of, filmmakers and performers to kind of assemble it all together, and then eventually asking for readers as well.
Yeah. So Sandra, let's hear from you on this. I mean, one interesting point that I know you made was one about kind of reverse recency bias or something. For example, Sinners, which I think a lot of us think is one of the best movies that we've seen in the last 25 years, but we saw it very recently and did not make this list. It made the readers list. But Sandra, go anywhere you want with this.
Well, first of all, I have to say that it's really funny that I'm popping in after the Marvel conversation, because in my household, we exclusively refer to Michael Clayton as the MCU. So I just think that's kind of a funny dimension of this. I think, there's a fair amount of recency bias on this list, but not nearly as much as I would have expected. And I think that that's because in the kind of critical industry class, there's actually quite a real reluctance to crown a film a masterpiece before you can kind of get a sense of the development of its legacy. For instance, American Beauty wasn't in contention for this, but it's it wouldn't have made the cut if it were, despite being such a hit at the time that it came out. Like, you do have to sort of wait and see how a film is going to grow in the cultural imagination. But the thing that I find really interesting about the construction of this list is, if we're thinking about the development of like the 21st century canon, is how this list reflects these like very 21st century seeming anxieties about defining good taste, right? Like, it's populist, it's also prestige, it's commercial, it's indie. There's a mixture of international films and domestic films, Oscar darlings, like forgotten treasures. I think really emblematic of this is that the number 100 is super bad, and it sort of seems like what they're saying with starting the list with that is like, we're not like a regular list, we're actually going to be a cool list, and like this is an approachable list of movies. So I think I'm less interested in the list as such, which, reading the list, it actually like all seemed like I could have probably told you what the top 10 were going to be, just to be honest. And so it's less interesting as a list itself than it is as kind of a commentary about how we think culturally about what defines a good movie.
Yeah, we should just help people understand or get their hooks into this. I'll give you the top 10. Parasite, Mulholland Drive, There Will Be Blood, In the Mood for Love, Moonlight, No Country for Old Men, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Get Out, and Spirited Away, and The Social Network. So, Shawn, I don't know, where do you want to go with this conversation?
I want to go to the fact that, I think what's interesting about this list is I think it's hard with lists, right? Because there's this element of like, well, how could they put this number 22? And it's like, well, it's polling people and they kind of just get the average, whatever. So I understand it. But there's some selections where it's like, I feel like this is the right director, but the wrong movie. Or like the right studio, but the wrong, like Ratatouille, I don't think is top 100 of the of Pixar choices. I don't think Up should be up there either. I would go Inside Out, or maybe Toy Story 3, or The Incredibles, I think could fit here. But I don't. I'm actually surprised, and I don't care about lists. Like, I really don't. Like, people love to argue about lists, and I never argue. It's like, it's just their list. Just make your own, which you can do on the website, which is cool. But I think they got it mostly right, which is kind of surprising. Like, it's there's always going to be like, okay, there could be more women on here. There could be more people of color. There could be more foreign films. But I think largely this is, or international films, should I say? I think this is like a great list. I'm actually surprised. Like, I didn't engage with the list at all until this was the task for this episode, because I saw a lot of stuff about it. I was like, I don't care about lists. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know what? That's a sterling top 10. Like, I'm surprised, not because I love Parasite. It would probably be in my top 10 list. I'm surprised it made number 1, but I'm not surprised it's in the top 10. Social Network, everybody loves that. Like, every critic loves Social Network. I like the movie. They love it. And it's great. So it all makes sense. It's just surprising that it actually is fairly representative. There's some omissions. Inside Man should be on there, for example, but I like it.
Yeah, I think Bill's with you on Inside Man.
Oh, yeah.
For the benefit of listeners, remind us about that one.
So Inside Man is a Spike Lee film. I already complained. I also added another one of his 21st century films to my personal list, Black Klansman. But, Inside Man is really interesting because in many ways, I think a lot of people who have just sort of a rigid or stereotypical view of what a Spike Lee film is would not even know that Inside Man was a Spike Lee film. And it almost seemed like in the promotional materials, they kind of downplayed that a little bit. It wasn't kind of like up in your face that this is, as he calls it, a Spike Lee joint. But it's a really, I think, excellent film about basically a heist. And the questions of like who is really innocent and who is really guilty, and it plays out in some really interesting ways about the way that we stereotype people and about our assumptions about how we can just easily kind of make those connections. So it kind of is both just kind of like this fun like heist film, but also on another level, very much like in tune to what Spike Lee's concerns have been over the decades.
You
And
know,
it's got Denzel Washington, Jodie Foster, and Christopher Plummer throwing 90-mile-per-hour fastballs at
Yeah,
each
what a
other. It's
cast.
so good.
And a great script. Like, it's just really cool, and it should be on there.
speaking of Christopher Plummer, actually, one movie I'm surprised they didn't pick was the movie Beginners, which is a Mike Mills movie about a father, an older father, kind of revealing himself to be a gay man. Also has one of the best performances by a Jack Russell Terrier I've ever seen, and I've known some Jack Russell Terriers pretty well. But both those Mike Mills films, the one about his mother too, 20th Century Women, was really, really good. You know, Xandra, this sort of builds on the first segment, which you were not in, but you know, it's also there's a little bit of snobbery, I think, there about things like Tolkien movies and Marvel movies. I think Black Panther made it because Black Panther is just going to make it, and one of the Tolkien movies made it. Interestingly, when they turned the readers loose on this, they had way more Marvel movies, and they had all three of those Lord of the Rings movies, although I think they have kind of in slightly the wrong order. But there is a kind of a Hollywood thing like, or we're going to try to slough off some of the IP that's dominated. And the readers also, McPants is pointing out, they had both of the Dune movies on their list. And there's kind of a little turning up your nose at IP stuff on the list of the savants. But I don't know, what was your take on that?
Well, you're kind of asking the wrong person, because I think I specifically opted out of the Marvel segment because I just have nothing to say about the Marvel movies, and am like a little bit allergic to like fantasy IP properties in general. Like even Barbie, which was made about like IP that is kind of like fundamental to my identity and my personhood, like wasn't quite for me. So I think my feeling about that is like they did integrate some of them, and the truth of the matter is I don't feel sorry for Marvel, for Marvel movies that aren't getting the critical attention. Like they are making a lot of money, so I don't really feel like their inclusion on the list is a huge problem. I mean, there are definitely like commercial product, like very, very commercial movies that are not on the list that I lamented. Mean Girls, for instance, another film that is like instrumental to my to my personhood. I thought was a huge omission. I feel like that is like really fundamental to the establishment of like the 21st century like comedy canon, the 21st century girl movie canon. So that felt like a big omission to me. But you know, I definitely don't. I think that the Marvel movies can find. Oh, the other thing that I was going to say is there's another feature of this New York Times piece where you can kind of go vote on smaller categories of movies. Like you can vote on like your favorite, like best 21st century rom-com. And if you can even believe it, I went to vote for best 21st century rom-com, and number one is the film Love Actually, a film that I have seen more than any other movie in my entire life, but that I assumed was pretty much universally despised.
Oh no, no.
I mean, but people do really hate it, and so, but it was interesting. It was really interesting to see these like kind of like
Who hates Love Actually?
Self-selecting. I mean,
Me?
people are like, yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of people really hate it.
No, I've actually never seen it.
But you know, but to see these kind of like self-selecting reader polls was also really interesting. You can like vote on like your favorite Meryl Streep movie, and it's like The Devil Wears Prada is way at the top, and then it's like Adaptation, which is actually on the main list, is like way down. So I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to see how those like self-selecting reader polls also operate.
I've watched Love Actually probably about 20 times. Maybe 11 of them were voluntary, and the other 9 were the other person in the room just said, no, we're watching, it's Christmas, we're watching Love Actually. But I'm sort of amazed that anybody hates it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could sort of make this part of the endorsements in the next segment, or we could do it right now. I don't know. Shawn, do you have a movie that was just never considered, that we haven't mentioned so far, that you would have put in somewhere in that 100 great movies list?
I am very surprised considering some of the recency of the list and my adoration for the movie, but also what it did for the animation industry in the last few years. I'm surprised neither of the Spider-Verse movies made that list. Into the Spider-Verse, which was 2018, I believe, completely revolutionized or revitalized animation in Hollywood. Like the way what they were doing, playing with different frames. It was also just an incredible IP. Like for it to be an IP movie, I remember when they announced that movie, I was like, I don't want to see more Spider-Man. I'm good. I'm so good on this. And then I saw it. I was like, this. I cried. Like, not even because it was like emotional. It was a scene early in the movie. And I was like, this is incredible. This is the best thing I've ever seen. Like animation wise, I've never seen anything. And it's Spider-Man, and he's swinging, and it was perfect. So I was very surprised not to see that. I would have liked to see maybe Blade Runner 2049 on there, but honestly, I'm really surprised at how much I'm like, not even Ocean's 12. I feel like does not get enough. People hate. It's a very what's the word? Polarizing film. I feel like that's such a great movie. But Ocean's 11 on the list, and I love Soderbergh, so I'll take it. But yeah.
All right. So we got to go a break right now. So these guests will have an opportunity to make some recommendations on the other side. Let's do that, and we'll be back.
When I was born, my mother died. She said, bye-bye, baby, bye-bye. I said, where you going? Just born. She said, I'll only be gone for a while. My mother loved to leave in style. That's why God made the movie.
And it's time to say a word of thanks or two, although it could be argued that basically Jonathan McPants is the whole backstage crew here. He's technically producing, but thanks also to Gina Matruda for making sure we're all set up just right here. And we're going to make some recommendations here with the remaining panel members, Shawn Murray, Zandra Ellen, and Bill Yousman. Zandra Ellen, why don't you get us going? What are you going to recommend to us?
Okay. I feel like I have come off as a bit of a snob. So I'm going to recommend a new film that I saw last week, which is the zombie film 28 Years Later, the new addition into the 28 Days and Weeks Later compendium. It is absolutely astoundingly good. I would never in a million years have expected myself to love this movie. The themes that it is sort of playing with, from illness, death, isolation, it's like very much like a post-COVID movie, but also about so many other things. It's really like it's like a completely remarkable, astounding achievement. And I would I couldn't recommend it more highly.
Well, thanks for that. Also, thank you for the title of the podcast I'm launching after Shawn and I get Not the Guys You Kill going is going to be You're Asking the Wrong Person. And so, so you gave me that title. So Shawn Murray, what are you going to recommend to us?
It's on the list. I think it's in the 80s or 90s. Memories of Murder. Great sort of crime thriller by Bong Joon-ho. It's like weirdly, like it's dark and heavy, but also kind of funny and odd, and it's just it's a really great movie, and it's kind of underseen. Like everybody's seen Parasite, but if you want to dig into some of his earlier work, I mean, Memories of Murder is like one of my most recommended movies. Like I remember when it came, I was so excited when it came on the Criterion Collection because I got it immediately.
It's by the way, it's 99 on the list. I mean, it was like a nail biter whether it was going to make it, probably. But yeah, thanks for that. I think one great thing about this list is there's a lot of movies that are on it that I haven't seen that I'm reminded I should make a point of seeing, and that is definitely one of them. Bill Yousman, how about you?
So my first endorsement is not a movie, but I feel like it's kind of adjacent to this list because it's the new television show called The Studio. which is very much about the film industry. Created by Seth Rogen, stars Seth Rogen, but also like this great sort of ensemble cast. And, he plays a new studio head who very, very much is a movie, a cinephile, and wants to make like these great quality films, but is constantly, being destroyed by just the industry pressures. And it gets into a lot of the issues that I think, we like to talk about on the nose, and that are just sort of so related to the film industry in the 21st century. And then really quickly, I tried to push this on Colin. I don't know if he was buying. Get Sunk is the new solo album by Matt Berninger, who is the lead singer of The National. It's very melancholy, but I think it's kind of beautiful, and I'm loving it.
Bill, take this any way you want. This is a joke from lunch yesterday. Dan Harb began a sentence. Bill, take this any way you want, and you just know what's coming next is going to be very worrisome. So,
just a 2-minute story.
Yeah, I'll just build on the music recommendations. I just say that one piece of music from Ironheart that nobody did mention that I had never heard before. I didn't know the artist. It's called Confessions. It's by Sudan Archives. This song actually just blew my mind. I went and watched the video of it, and now I'm going to check out the instrumental version of it as well. And it's just an amazing song. I thought we've got just about 3 minutes or so left, and so feel free to jump in or chime in on any of those. But I thought I would throw out a few movies that I would have put on my list that are not mentioned at all on this list. And some of them, we've already mentioned a few of them. But first of all, and these are just sort of kind of idiosyncratically among my favorite movies, The Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger and Paul Bettany and Rufus Sewell. Love and I think, is that you, Shawn? Did you just say that? Yeah. I think it's just a great movie. It's just, for what it is very nearly perfect. And it has
that scene set to Golden Years by David Bowie is one of the best scenes ever.
Yes, and the modern music is used in this very medieval setting. There's also this one scene where there's going to be a big jousting tournament, and these caparisoned horses and knights are coming across a bridge into this medieval village. And Thin Lizzy's "The Boys Are Back in Town" is playing. And the music, the use of music alone is terrific. Heath Ledger is great. Everybody's great. One of mine idiosyncratic favorites, very early Rian Johnson, is Brick with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. What a terrific movie. This is a noir movie, like a 30s or 40s noir movie set in a modern California high school. I think it's in California. And it's just... It's just a perfect little movie, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah, I think that's terrific. A couple of the kind of
third it.
Yeah, the musical version of Hairspray is also from the 21st century. I don't know, Christopher Walken and John Travolta having a song and dance number. I mean, come on now, I mean, there's just so many things about that movie that are terrific. I'm surprised it just seems to turn up nowhere. Maybe it's on one of the sub lists or something, but I was kind of amazed that nobody talked about that. And then one. I bet people are not going to chime in on this one, but I think the movie The Big Short is actually kind of underrated. This is...
I would chime in on that.
Yeah, it's got a tremendous cast, and Christian Bale gives a tremendous performance in there. And the device that is used... I think it's Aaron McKay directing. I think I'm right about that. That some of the complicated financial things are explained by like Margot Robbie in a bubble bath or something. So anything to kind of make this a slightly more interesting explanation of something like that. So yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, can I just throw in? I like The Big Short a lot, but can I just throw in a different Ryan Gosling project that would have been on my personal list?
Yeah.
2016's The Nice Guys by Shane Black. I love that movie. Great comedy. I wish they would have made a sequel. Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. So good.
Yeah. Hey, Shawn, that's a nice shirt. Did they make it for men?
A
great line from The Big Short. All right, we're going to have to say goodbye right now, reluctantly, but this has been a wonderful panel. Great to have Zandra Ellen and Bill Yousman, Shawn Murray. Thanks to Taneisha Duggan for her work in the first segment. Thanks to you for listening. We're going to be back next week with a whole bunch of new shows.
It's a very, very, very cool place to hang out. Yeah. It's cozy, like a Cracker Barrel. Yeah, we all be laughing, talking, joking, talking about this and talking about that, and talk about everything as a matter of fact. Oh, yeah. Talk about Torrington, Vernon, Danbury, Waterbury, Alderberry, Woodbury, hitting on New Britain, Vernon, I already said that one, Avon, Farmington, yeah.